My request for approval was promptly denied. It would be fine if it's the storage shed. I exclaimed, "Don't make a fool of me. Our house is fairly spacious. If the rooms were tidied up, there would be no problem having my father live with us. Truly, my husband's feelings for me and my family are less than that of a pet." "Well then, I will sincerely clean up the storage shed and renovate it." "Even the storage shed can be used just like a regular room if it's clean. There's meaning in living with my father now," I determined. Aaron, however, seemed unenthusiastic. "There's no way I'm doing such a thing. Why do I have to renovate for your father?" I recalled the major renovation we did to ensure my mother-in-law, who visits sometimes, would not have trouble staying over. We even installed a bathroom and toilet, similar to a hotel. "I won't rely on such a demon-like man anymore." I made a decision. "My name is Vivian Westhill, 52 years old. I help with the company my husband runs. My son, Matthew, has left home, and it's just the two of us living together. My mother-in-law sometimes comes over, but since her house is nearby, she doesn't live with us." Reflecting on how I met my husband nearly 30 years ago, I shared, "I hate to say it myself, but I was famous for being good-looking in my hometown. My mother passed away in a traffic accident when I was in middle school, and I was helping each other out with my father. Although I was invited out by many men, they were nothing but a hindrance to me. I had a dream of becoming an accountant and was working hard towards that. Despite my popularity, I had a boyfriend of the same age. We would secretly call each other and go out to eat after part-time. I had no intention of dating anyone else. The only people I could let my guard down with were him and my father. He alone appreciated not my appearance, but my seriousness and true strength, among other aspects of my personality and way of thinking. I think we would have become a couple even if I wasn't the same appearance. That was the kind of relationship we had. However, everything changed one day when I returned home to find an unfamiliar family of 3 in my house. Seeing me, my father made a troubled face. I must have been more surprised. A known family introduced themselves. "We are the West Hills." Hearing the name West Hill made it click. A famous rich family in town. I wondered why they were in my house. "Welcome home, Vivian. Mr. West Hill here wants to take you as his wife." Shocked, I protested. "A wife? Marriage? What are you talking about?" I had never seen these 3 before. Everyone knows they hold significant influence in town as a wealthy family, yet the talk of me becoming a bride was unbelievable. "Nice to meet you, Vivian. Our Aaron has fallen for you at first sight. He insists on having you as his wife." My would-be father-in-law began speaking. Despite feeling unreal, they didn't disappear, and I was told, "Take your time and talk it over with your father. We'll come back in a week to hear your answer." As they left, I pondered, could our fate be decided in just a week? It didn't seem real. I thought things like this only happened in dramas, and I couldn't believe it was happening to me. Stunned, I watched as the 3 of them left. "Dad, what's this about a debt? What's your relation with those people?" My father turned to me with a pale face, drained of all blood. "Vivian, I'm sorry. It's true. I was lonely and started drinking and gambling. Before I knew it, the money was gone, and I began borrowing to cover it. Everything I heard since coming home was beyond my capacity to accept." "Debts? Why didn't you tell me? I understand you were lonely after Mom suddenly passed away, but having a debt." I couldn't think calmly, naturally. I couldn't even talk about it calmly. This was indeed out of the blue. As far as I could remember, my father never got drunk or angry from losing at gambling. I didn't even know. Mr. Westhill invited me and introduced me to a place with Mr. Westhill's face. We could drink on a tab, and I didn't even know how much the bill was accumulating. The same thing with gambling. He let me buy lottery tickets together, and it just piled up. My father is truly a good person, not knowing how to doubt people. It must have been easy for someone like a scam artist. They must have been scheming from the start to trap my father and have their way with me. Interrupting my thoughts, I questioned, "Hold on a second. What happens to you if I don't marry their son?" In desperation, I pondered if there was any alternative. The looming threat of being pursued by debt collectors or sent to a work camp left me trembling. I clung to a shred of hope, suggesting, "There's no such thing as work camps these days. Can't you just keep working hard to pay it off?" My father's response was disheartening. "Sorry, Vivian, that's impossible. Debt collectors might start contacting my workplace. I might not be able to work anymore." Feeling completely cornered and with no more options to explore, I decided it was enough. There was nothing more to discuss. Despite wanting to vent my feelings of frustration, humiliation, and anger, I couldn't bring myself to do that to my father, who had always taken care of me. I packed my bags and made the immediate decision to go to the West Hill family. There was no use worrying about it. Making this decision wasn't easy, but considering the increasing interest on the debt, I couldn't cling to my home any longer. Marrying Aaron seemed to be the only way to resolve this, and before I could change my mind, I quietly left the house. That night, I arrived at the West Hills home and boldly knocked on the front door. "You're early. Seems like you're blinded by money, just like everyone else," Aaron remarked. Frustration boiled within me, and I wanted to scream that I didn't want any money and wasn't unhappy because I was poor. But his words treated me like a possession, objectifying, and disgusting. Leaving everything behind, I looked forward to being with him from now on, offering a forced greeting as I entered the West Hill household. After that, everything progressed in a whirlwind. Betrayed by my trusted father and breaking up with my beloved boyfriend, it felt like all my emotions had disappeared. The grand wedding with a local famous person, attended by many, blurred in my memory. The only vivid image was my father's haggard look, erasing my resentment towards him. Accepting this as my fate, I decided to change my outlook and enjoy my married life. Little did I know, that was just the beginning of a harrowing experience. Responsibilities piled up, from housework to assisting with the family business, and the pressure to have children took a toll on my mental state. My mother-in-law constantly nagged, and my husband's initial kindness turned into indifference. It was far from the sweet married life I had imagined. "You're completely useless. A woman from the club would be better. Just quietly do your job and chores," my husband declared, treating me like a housemaid. When I became pregnant, even severe morning sickness didn't evoke sympathy. "You're getting fat. Just do your chores and work properly. I don't know why I married you." I gave up on being acknowledged in this home. A wife from a poor family would never be seen as more than a servant. Frustrating as it was, for the sake of my unborn child, I had to endure. Eventually, I gave birth to a boy, but my husband, now with an heir, hardly ever came home. When he did, he reeked of strong perfume and alcohol, evidence of his time spent at clubs. However, my primary focus was on raising my child, so my husband's absence brought a sense of relief. Matthew, my son, grew up healthy and was easy to raise, despite my mother-in-law's persistent annoyance, claiming that Aaron would have been a better choice. I preferred Matthew not turning into a worthless man. My kind-hearted son aspired to become a doctor, and when he left for university, I felt a void in my heart. To fill that emptiness, I decided to dedicate myself more to my work. Around that time, my father-in-law, who had treated me as a human being, passed away. My mother-in-law moved to a condo near the downtown area, enjoying the inheritance from my father-in-law. With the loss of the person who had supported and cared for me like my own father, I began to miss my father. Taking advantage of my husband's indifference, I started talking to my father again, just like old times. Though it was challenging to speak without making my father feel guilty, one day he looked serious. When I asked what was wrong, he said in a resigned tone that he was diagnosed with malignant lymphoma and had only 6 months to live. I was utterly shocked and couldn't believe it. "No way, Dad, that can't be. You're so lively. It's impossible that you only have half a year left, just when we could finally be like a father and daughter again. I can't bear the thought of never seeing you again." Despite my emotional plea, my father smiled kindly and nodded. Wanting to ensure he wouldn't be alone, I decided to ask my husband to let him live with us in our spacious home. I'm not ready to give up, but at least I don't want him to be alone. My father expressed happiness hearing those words and left with a gentle smile. For the first time since getting married, I decided to confront my husband that night. As usual, he came home drunk with the smell of perfume. Seeing me awake and waiting for him, he looked startled. "What's the matter? Don't tell me you want some affection." It seemed he hadn't changed his view on women being objects. I looked straight at him and said, "Aaron, I have something important to talk about. My father has been diagnosed with terminal cancer and has only 6 months to live. I want him to live with us in this house. Of course, I won't let it be a bother to you. We can just use one of the vacant rooms in the house. That's okay, right? You will listen to such a request, won't you?" Since my husband was hardly at home, there should have been no reason to object. I took it for granted that he would agree. But the unexpected reply was, "Just leave that half-dead old man alone. I'm not going to let someone like that into the house. It'll ruin the atmosphere." "Absolutely not. If you want to do that, you can leave. I have no intention of living with a sick person." My request was flatly denied, and I felt like I had fallen into a gaping hole in the ground. In my heart, I screamed, "If you want, the shed is fine. Don't mock me. Our house is quite large, and there is no problem if my father moves in. After cleaning up a room, we can live without facing each other. My husband really holds feelings for me and my family that are less than that for a pet. Well then, I will seriously clean and renovate the storage shed. If the storage shed is cleaned, it can be used just like a normal room. There is meaning in living with my father now." However, my husband remained adamant, saying, "There's no way I'm doing such a thing. Why do I have to renovate for your father?" Recalling the major renovation I did for my mother-in-law, I decided not to rely on such a demon-like man anymore. Since then, I worked more than ever and visited my father when I had the time. Some days he seemed to be doing well, and other days he seemed to be doing badly. I couldn't feel alive every day unless I saw my father's face. I was only praying for my father's illness to be cured. Miraculously, my prayers seemed to be heard, as my father was still alive after 6 months. A bright light seemed to shine, and I started to live positively, little by little. About half a year after my father's confession, my husband came back with a pale face. I sensed that something serious had happened because he had never come back early since we got married. "Sit down. I have important news. I was told that I have cancer, and my life expectancy is short." Come to think of it, my husband had been looking pale lately. I thought it was due to drinking too much alcohol or lack of sleep. Strangely, I was not shocked. It was completely someone else's problem. Besides, everyone should take care of themselves. "You were like, leave that half-dead man alone, right? I'll do just as you said. If you want me to leave, I'm leaving." "Oh yes, I found a lawyer for our divorce matters." I left the room without looking back. I decided to leave suddenly, but I did not regret it at all. "You don't have a penny, do you? Where do you think you're going, leaving this house? You won't be able to live a luxurious life like you have been. You have been living on everything I have worked hard for, you inhuman." Does he still think that I have been living in this house for money? I had been subjected to brainwashing through my mother-in-law and endured verbal abuse from my husband, believing that I needed to stay and protect this house. However, since learning about my father's terminal diagnosis 6 months ago, I woke up to the realization that I couldn't continue living like this. During this time, I mentally prepared myself for divorce, ready to leave the house at any moment. My husband continued to shout something in the background, but it no longer concerned me. I never aspired for a luxurious life. All I needed was the ability to eat 3 meals a day and a place to sleep. I returned to my room, packed only the essentials into my suitcase, and left the house. Whether my husband faced trouble or not, it didn't matter to me. I promptly sent the email I had drafted, resigning from my position to the company's president. I aimed to settle everything related to my husband and the West Hill family, which I had been supporting for nearly 30 years. In fact, since discussing my father's situation half a year ago, I had been in contact with a divorce specialist lawyer, recommended by the company's advisory lawyer. I shared everything about our marriage, starting from events before our marriage. The lawyer listened quietly, nodding in understanding. When I mentioned that I had been working for the family business without pay, the lawyer was genuinely surprised. It would amount to hundreds of thousands of dollars in unpaid salary. After finishing my story, he immediately commented that the divorce should be straightforward. I had also gathered evidence of my husband's faults, including photos of emails from other women and notes documenting serious moral harassment. Additionally, I had recorded his verbally abusive remarks on my smartphone. While that evidence was sufficient, the lawyer also provided photos of my husband's infidelity for free. He assured me that everything would go well, even if I didn't take further action. He urged me to feel like I was on a big ship and didn't need to answer the angry calls from my husband, as he would handle everything. I walked with a smile, naturally ignoring the angry calls. Amidst the calls from my husband, there were also calls from my mother-in-law, likely questioning if I planned to abandon everything when my son was in trouble. If her son was in trouble, she should take care of him herself. Although a luxurious room resembling a show home awaited her return to that house, she seemed panicked. The company started by my father-in-law was falling apart without me, who had been a crucial support. The president, who was more of a decoration due to ESS, couldn't steer the company effectively, and things were not going well. Some colleagues had reached out, asking me to come back, but I had no intention of dedicating myself to the company any longer. Despite its local significance, the number of clients would steadily decrease. While I felt sorry for letting my father-in-law's hard-earned company decline, I believed that if my husband and mother-in-law had worked as diligently as him, this wouldn't have happened. My decision to quit might have been different, and my son Matthew might have considered taking over the family business. Furthermore, my husband not only contributed little to the company, but also seemed to constantly engage in inappropriate behavior with female employees, leading to suspicions and resignations. It appears that those women are planning to sue the company for sexual harassment. Now, my husband has to handle the repercussions of the mess he created in his life, and it seems that justice is catching up with him. I desired justice for my husband and mother-in-law, wanting them to face proper consequences so that those who had worked honestly wouldn't be made to look foolish. To add to the turmoil, the company faced accusations of tax evasion by the IRS, discovered accidentally while my lawyer was investigating. Further examination revealed questionable points in the accounts, raising suspicions of my husband's embezzlement. Looking back, it was odd that he had substantial money at his disposal, considering his salary. While assisting with the accounting, I had been indifferent to my husband's financial activities, not realizing the disparity between his income and expenditures. If I had questioned where the excess funds were coming from, I would have understood the truth. In reality, he'd have been squandering the company's money, including my salary that he had transferred to his own account. Kickbacks for orders, bribes for personal gain, tax evasion, and special embezzlement. My husband's crimes were diverse. I couldn't predict whether the court's judgment or his life expectancy would come first, but I desired him to atone for as much as possible. 6 months ago, I began scrutinizing the books, copying them to preserve evidence, and submitting them to the IRS. My prior study to become an accountant proved beneficial in this endeavor. To bridge the financial gap, my husband sold the company to a major corporation and hastily disposed of the large mansion at a bargain. My mother-in-law also sold her condo to meet the IRS obligations and pay me. Now they live together in a small apartment complex, and rumors suggest my husband has several children from affairs, necessitating child support payments. Despite his age, my husband seems to have life insurance, but its adequacy is uncertain. My mother-in-law, previously condescending, now works to cover her son's medical and living expenses. The parent and child should reflect on their actions until the end. Receiving a substantial amount, I purchased a condo in a convenient location. I reunited with my father, who is now recovering, thanks to Matthew's introduction to a renowned doctor. My father had been living with Matthew, saving money for me to free me from financial burdens. Matthew, considering my father more respectable than his own, agreed to my request. Living together until the condo was secured, I chose a place close to Matthew's home. I started working at the law firm that aided me, contributing to corporate cases. Despite not being an accountant, my experience is an asset, and I'm studying to acquire a tax accountant qualification. My husband is serving an actual imprisonment sentence, relieving concerns about money or sustenance. Ironically, my mother-in-law moved into a relative's house, experiencing what it's like to be in need after acting superior for so long. Seeking justice for my mistreatment, I'm astounded by the prevalence of power and sexual harassment in various transactions. I worried about potential job losses due to the company acquisition, but it seems to have worked out for most. As everything falls into place, I savor the happiness that comes from knowing I made the right choices. Returning home from work, I find my father and another man waiting. It's my ex-boyfriend, the person I truly loved. After nearly 30 years, he welcomes me back warmly. My father, who had apologized to him when I escaped from the troubled house, knew about my ex-boyfriend. The three men, including Matthew, were watching over me. Now, I plan to live with these three men whom I genuinely love from the bottom of my heart. Your drawings won't sell. If you have time for that, get a part-time job, Liam declared, tearing up the tickets to my art show before my eyes. As the torn pieces fluttered to the ground, tears welled up in my eyes. The dream I had nurtured since childhood, finally realized in my own art exhibition, was consistently belittled by both Liam and my in-laws whenever I picked up a pencil. Despite the constant criticism, I persisted. I juggled household chores and the care of our daughter Lucy, never neglecting my responsibilities. I refrained from criticizing Liam's hobbies, but this blatant disrespect was too much to bear. I decided I wouldn't forgive Liam. It was time to live life on my terms, without allowing anyone to dictate or complain. Picking up the torn tickets, I locked eyes with Liam. I'm Emma, 35 years old, married to Liam since I was 22. Lucy, our only daughter, just started elementary school. As a mother, seeing her adapt to school life brings me some peace of mind. After seeing Liam and Lucy off and completing household chores, I settle at my desk. Working as a freelance illustrator, my clients range from individuals to corporations. Despite steady commissions, my family has never acknowledged the value of my work. We reside in a second-hand house with my in-laws, who contribute nothing to household chores and only complain about my cooking and drawing, labeling me as useless. Their belief that drawings can't make money persists, despite my explanations. They suggest I give them money from the Social Security checks they receive, claiming it's proof of their past hard work. I proposed living separately, but Liam always defends his parents, making me the villain. Lucy adores her grandmother, who spends her money on toys for her. Lucy compares me unfavorably, believing her grandma would never say no. When I intervene, Lucy accuses me of being mean, causing public scenes. One night, after Liam scolded me for making Lucy cry, he decided that he and his mother would take care of her. This commitment lasted only 3 days before I was once again tasked with Lucy's care. Despite the challenges, my art thrived. Receiving an email invitation for a solo exhibition, I embraced the recognition from clients who appreciated my work. Working tirelessly into the night, I created new pieces for the upcoming exhibition. Despite my family's indifference, the thought of showcasing my art to a wider audience fueled my determination. Facing a dilemma about inviting Liam to the exhibition, I approached him during a baseball game he was engrossed in. His response dashed my hopes as he revealed plans to hang out with friends on the day of my exhibition. "Oh, can't you spare a little time?" I pleaded. "My artwork's been recognized, and I have a solo exhibition coming up. I was hoping you'd come see it." Liam remained fixated on the TV, silent. Desperation edged my voice as I repeated, "It's my first solo show. Some of my regulars even helped plan it. And I've got some new pieces on display. What the hell are you talking about? Liam finally looked at me, disdain in his eyes. Don't drag me into your little hobby. It's not a hobby. Some of the displayed artwork might even sell. Who the hell's gonna buy your drawings? If you've got time for that, why don't you just get a part-time job? Liam shouted, snatching the ticket from my hand. He tore it up, and the torn pieces scattered at our feet. Staring at the fragments in shock, tears welled up. Picking up the pieces, it became clear Liam would never understand my profession. I never belittled his hobbies, yet he never allowed me the same freedom. I've had enough, I glared at him. I can't take it anymore, I declared, venting my feelings. The words solidified my resolve. I'm gonna break up with Liam. To be honest, the thought of divorce had always been on my mind. I've already got a contact number for a lawyer who assists in the divorce process. But every time I considered it, Lucy crossed my mind. Our child needs both parents. Moreover, if I left, Lucy would have to transfer schools. That's what I'd endured all this time. But that ends today. Ignoring Liam's calls, I returned to my room. Packing my things, I confirmed the lawyer's business card was there. Heading to Lucy's room, I found her doing her homework at her desk. "Mom, I'm sorry," Lucy said. Looking at her face, guilt washed over me. I hugged her, and Lucy looked puzzled. "Lucy, I've decided to leave this house." "What?" The innocence vanished from Lucy's face. Although guilty, I continued. "What do you want to do, Lucy? Stay here with Dad or come with me?" Expecting her to choose her grandma, Lucy surprised me. "I want to be with you, Mom." "Lucy, I love the paintings you make," I said, and Lucy laughed. She smiled shyly and pointed at her desk. "Just trying to be like you. I want to be a good artist too." "No, you're already good. You'll surpass me soon." Tears filled my eyes. Lucy was drawing a young girl standing in a flower field, a theme I often drew. Leaving a note and the lawyer's business card on the dining table, Lucy and I headed to my parents' place. They welcomed us without hesitation, aware of the situation. "It must have been tough with Liam behaving like that, Emma," my mother said. "Yeah." Before I could catch my breath, my cell phone rang. It was Liam, seething with fury on the other end. "Emma, where's Lucy?" "She's with me. She decided to stay with me at my parents' place. If we're going through with a divorce, we'll need to discuss Lucy's arrangements." Though I aimed to shield Lucy from confusion, I yearned to seek support from my parents before navigating the divorce process. Surprisingly, Lucy opted to accompany me. "Dad, do you want to talk?" "Yes." I handed the phone to Lucy, and Liam's tone softened instantly. "Lucy, are you okay?" "Yeah, Dad. I'm sorry, but I want to be with Mom." "Why would you say that? Staying with her will make you unhappy. Come back home." "Dad, that's not true." Lucy replied calmly, revealing a surprising maturity. "Mom tried her best all the time. I've seen it. But you and Grandma kept saying hurtful things about her paintings. I'm worried about Mom. That's why I want to stay with her." With that, Lucy ended the call and gave me a bashful smile. I patted her head. Although it seemed we had no allies in that house, Lucy had been watching. In the following days, Liam bombarded my parents' home with calls and letters, all demanding Lucy's return. "It's okay. Everything will be all right." "Yeah, thanks, Mom." I continued my work as an illustrator, maintaining a calm demeanor while working from my parents' place. Unlike my in-laws, my parents contributed to household chores, and we supported each other. Naturally, I spent more time with Lucy. She asked me to teach her how to draw and help her with her studies, and I always responded with a smile. Alongside household chores, my art also demanded my attention. Still, I never mistreated Lucy, who had chosen to stay with me. As the day of my solo exhibition approached, my father couldn't attend due to work, but I decided to take my mother and Lucy. Then, one day, a knock echoed at my parents' front door. Lucy eagerly ran to answer it, but halted abruptly, returning to me in a frightened voice, "Mom, Dad's here." I had anticipated Liam might show up in person eventually. I took a deep breath. I had no intention of letting him in or even opening the door. I planned to send him away immediately. "What do you want?" I tried to sound as cold as possible. To my surprise, Liam's reply was, "Emma, please come back." I was wrong. "What are you trying to do?" I asked. His sincerity seemed genuine. In a weak voice, Liam continued, "My parents aren't doing anything. They're just eating fast food, and the laundry's been piling up since the day you left." It seemed my expectations were coming true. With Liam out for work most of the time, this situation must be challenging for him. Wearing wrinkled clothes repeatedly and unable to maintain a tidy appearance, finding new jobs was likely difficult. The house was descending into chaos. "Please help me out. I wasn't doing anything in that house either, right?" I let out a sigh. "Your mother said I was a wife who didn't even do housework. You agreed so too." I was wrong. My mom claimed she was doing all the housework, and I believed her. I was fooled. He spoke as if he were a victim, despite joining my mother-in-law in bad-mouthing me. "Don't you have any intention to do housework yourself? I've never even held a knife, and I don't know how to use the washing machine. That doesn't mean you can rely on me." Essentially, he wanted me to return and handle the piled-up chores. What a joke. I'm never going back to that house. The day I left, I let go of all my feelings for Liam. There's no way I'm going to feel sorry for him now. I'm not your maid. "Isn't it a wife's duty to do housework?" Liam's tone became harsh. Beyond exasperation, I calmly responded, "I don't want to be your wife anymore. Every morning, I rose early to prepare your lunch, yet never received a word of gratitude from you. There were days when the disappointment cut deeper upon seeing the untouched lunch. I diligently hung the laundry and ironed them to perfection, striving for a wrinkle-free result. Do you understand? I've been carrying out these chores 365 days a year, without a single thank you. So what's your point? Isn't that what wives are supposed to do? If there had been gratitude, we could have been a normal couple. I feel more strongly now that we'll never truly understand each other. Liam didn't get it, and he didn't want to. He was just temporarily down on his luck. Deep down, he hasn't changed. I'm going to live on my own strength. You should try hard on your own too." "Hey, Emma." Liam continued, but I ignored him and returned to the living room. Despite Liam banging on the door, he eventually seemed to give up and left. My exhibition turned out to be reasonably successful. Walking around the venue hand in hand with Lucy, my mother beside us, she pointed to a visitor and remarked, "Isn't that Liam?" Ha! I was taken aback. Facing Liam directly would be awkward, and it might bother Lucy. With these thoughts, I observed the visitor's face. He wore his hat low, but it was unmistakably Liam. "Mom, watch Lucy for me." "All right." I left Lucy with my mother and approached Liam, speaking quietly to avoid disturbing others. "What are you doing here? Have you really made painting your job?" His tone lacked spirit, and his clothes appeared wrinkled and unkempt. Liam's eyes briefly met mine. "But you're not selling any, right? Look over there." I pointed to a certain corner of the venue. The painting on the wall is a new piece. Below it, it shows sold. That painting's already been snagged by a private collector, and it has a price tag. Want to know how much? No, I'm good. Liam took a step back, looking startled. The sight of my artwork being sold seemed to shock him. "Excuse me, do you have a moment?" A local newspaper reporter approached, expressing their intent to feature the exhibition in an upcoming article, along with an interview. For freelancers, networking is crucial, and this was a welcome opportunity. Liam's eyes widened. "You're really making it big, aren't you?" "Well, let's just say I make more than you do," I replied matter-of-factly. Liam looked flustered, letting out a groan. He seemed to grasp the reality that our incomes were just enough to get by, and his parents' Social Security checks weren't the financial cushion they believed them to be. "Emma, you're really something." "What are you talking about now?" I walked away from Liam, but he followed closely. Emma, let's start over. Paint as much as you want. I'll help with the chores. Please come back. I didn't respond. His plea felt too self-serving, leaving me dumbfounded. Then I noticed someone watching, a ragged-looking couple. It was Liam's parents. Standing in front of my sold painting, their eyes darted between the sold sign and me. They didn't even glance at the artwork. They were simply astonished that my paintings could turn into cash. Liam, how did you get in without the ticket? When I told them I'm the husband of the illustrator, they let me in. You mean ex-husband? I corrected, irritation evident. By tearing up the ticket, Liam had severed any benefits from my artwork. Now he had no choice but to rely on his income and the meager social security his parents boasted about. Excuse me, this artwork is wonderful. Thank you. Another customer complimented, leading to another painting being sold. Liam and his parents stood there, visibly stunned. From the next day, relentless calls from Liam flooded in. Dad, what the heck happened? I wonder what should we do? His attempts to reconcile were unprecedented. After some thought, I reported Liam to the police as a stalker. Despite receiving a warning, Liam persisted with his calls and stalking, resulting in police custody. Me? A stalker? You gotta be kidding! I'm her husband. That was his futile argument, considering we were already divorced. His parents, embarrassed and feeling the judgmental gaze of their neighbors, distanced themselves from Liam as if fleeing. Regardless of where they went, rumors followed. My family never approved of my job. That must have been tough, I shared during an interview. I opened up about the agony of not receiving recognition for my work from Liam and his parents. The headline in the local paper read, Rising Star Creator, a Tragic Heroine. Despite adversity, she continued drawing. Looking at the article, it felt as though it was about someone else. Being labeled a tragic heroine wasn't as glamorous as it sounded. It was indeed challenging. However, things had changed for the better. I now had my daughter, my parents, and fans who appreciated my work. Liam, the very thing you rejected had this much power. Thanks to the feature in the local paper, my reputation as an author improved. I started receiving more work and could support my daughter on my income alone. Staying at my parents' house felt uncomfortable, so I rented an apartment near my daughter's school. My parents seemed disappointed, offering, You can always stay with us. You've been through a lot in that house. Thanks, but it's my life, I said, reminding myself not to rely on others, a lesson taught by Liam and his parents. I'm going to take that lesson to heart. One day, my daughter brought a friend home from school. Adjusting well after transferring, despite the inconveniences caused by my circumstances, she proudly introduced me. My mother's an artist. That's so cool. Since moving, my daughter sounded more mature. She switched from calling me mom to mother and began practicing drawing more seriously. Previously, she doodled random drawings, but now she showed interest in the tools I used for work and spent more time watching me. I'm going to be like you, mother. Really? That makes me happy. Want to try using this pen? Really? She blushed with excitement, reminding me of the joy I felt when I got new art supplies. Like mother, like daughter. At first, Lucy couldn't draw a straight line. Every attempt resulted in warped lines, creating a jumbled mess. However, after many tries, Lucy's drawing started to resemble actual pictures, and her use of paints and colored pencils showed promise. Apparently, she was one of the best artists in her class. Look at this, the teacher complimented her drawing. Really? Let me see. I was truly amazed. Witnessing my daughter's growth made me incredibly proud. I had only taught Lucy the basics, breaking down the human body into sections for easier drawing and explaining the relationship between light and shadow. Beyond that, she must have learned by watching me work or studying my finished paintings. Lucy might be even more talented than me, and I honestly believed it. Lucy gave a shy smile, expressing her determination. I'm going to keep on drawing for Lucy, for my fans, and most importantly, for myself, who never gave up on art no matter the circumstances. Why are